Outdoors Delmarva covers everything outdoors, including real fishing and hunting situations involving wildlife. We do our best each week to bring you tasteful content, but viewer discretion is advised. Now, enjoy the show.
This is Outdoors Delmarva, presented by Gateway Subaru. Higher standards.
This week, we head to Snow Hill to find out just how haunted Delmarva is. And we'll get a peek at some ghost hunting gear from a paranormal investigator in Georgetown. Plus plenty of spooky haunts within driving distance or floating distance if you find yourself a bit disembodied these days.
Welcome to Outdoors Delmarva, the show dedicated to a commitment of conservation and to the community that makes Delmarva's outdoors such a hidden gem here in the Mid-Atlantic region. My name is Jason Lee, and I'm standing in a cemetery, and I'm a little creeped out now.
This is Outdoors Delmarva, presented by Gateway Subaru. Higher standards. And now, here's Jason Lee.
Well, it's spooky season here on Delmarva, and as I stand inside the Pocomoke State Forest, one of the most supposedly haunted places on Delmarva, we are on the search for ghosts. This week's episode of Outdoors Delmarva is all about getting spooky, and we're going to hop in the old Gateway Subaru Outback, and we're going to head to Snow Hill, and we're going to talk with Chesapeake Ghost Tours and find out some history about some of the supposed hauntings on Delmarva, anywhere from Snow Hill to Berlin, all the way up to Cambridge and Princess Anne. We're also going to head to Georgetown to check in with a paranormal investigator, and we're going to try to hopefully not see any ghosts, because I'm not really a fan of that, but maybe you are, and maybe we'll get lucky.
Next to the Pocomoke River in Snow Hill is where we meet Mindy Burgoyne of Chesapeake Ghost Tours.
Remember, Halloween is it started in Ireland. I just got back from Ireland, and it's the time that was believed to be thin. In other words, the veil between this world and the eternal world, or the other world, is thin, so you can pass back and forth. This here, Snow Hill, is a spooky little town. And I know it very well. Just where we're standing here on the Pocomoke River, this river and the forest that flanks it, all the way from up in Delaware down to the mouth where it empties into the Chesapeake Bay, has, according to the folklore I found, a good 200-year legacy of being haunted or being associated with ghostly things. There's been many tragedies on this river. Prior to us developing safety rules and regulations where people boat safely, prior to that, there's an old saying, the river takes a life every year, and if it misses a year, it'll take two the next. So there's lots of stories of tragedies along the river, and that lends to the spookiness, the sort of hauntedness. The forest has so many stories, dating all the way back to the 1700s, that it's kind of amazing that unrelated sources keep sharing haunted stories that just run the whole length. There's even a thesis that Salisbury University, a student did, on the haunted Pocomoke Forest. The Snow Hill Inn is now it's a private home, but it still sits right up there on Market Street. It was built back in the 19th century. It was owned by Dr. Idlet, and Dr. Idlet was like a town doctor. He was a prominent person in the town. He had two children, a boy and a girl, and his son William was evidently going to follow in his father's footsteps and be a doctor, or at least a pharmacist. He was studying pharmacology in Baltimore, and he was found dead in his room. I guess he was about 21 or in his early 20s. This was 1904, I think. Anyway, he was found dead with his throat cut, and they say that William's spirit haunts that house. They, meaning scores of people that I talked to. So the personal interviews are like, you say, you used to work at the Snow Hill Inn, did anything weird happen? And there's never a person that doesn't say, yes, this happened, that happened. Candles go on by themselves. The fireplace lights by itself. Lots of fire stuff. Even paranormal investigators came in there and got pictures of orbs going through the bedroom that was allegedly haunted. Tenants that stayed there, guests that stayed there, innkeepers that stayed there would talk about full-blown apparitions. It turns out that William's sister married a senator, and he was very vocal about this. And in the 1920s or 30s, I can't remember what the date was, he gave an interview to a big newspaper and talked about this and said, we never thought he committed suicide. We always thought it was some kind of cover-up. But in those days, the coroner, the police, and the the people that help you, what are they, emergency medical people, the ambulance, they're all the same guy. There was a dead guy in a room that shows up and says, he's dead. There's a razor. They said they found a note, but in my research I found out that that note was found in a box, stuffed somewhere, days later. It was not like there was a note left saying, Father, we do know William was sick and he was failing, but it's unlikely, according to his family, that he did commit suicide. So there's a little mystery there, an unrestful spirit. William's buried right up there at Wacott Cemetery, and that legacy of haunting with that property continued until it went into private hands. I find that people who are more open to the idea of there being ghosts, they tend to experience it more. People that are not open to it and they say there's no such thing, they're close to it, so to them there's no such thing.
We'll finish up our conversation with Mindy Burgoyne of Chesapeake Ghost Tours right after the break. Outdoors Delmarva, presented by Gateway Subaru. We'll be right back.
You're watching Outdoors Delmarva, presented by Gateway Subaru. Higher standards. Sponsored by Shorts Marine.
Welcome back to our spooky season special here on Outdoors Delmarva. My name is Jason Lee, and we continue our conversation with Mindy Burgoyne of Chesapeake Ghost Tours as she continues to tell us about the haunted history of Snow Hill and some of the otherworldly contact situations that have happened at the River House Inn.
Originally, this was built by George Washington Purnell, and the Purnell name is very big in Snow Hill. There are a lot of Purnells here in Worcester County. And George Washington Purnell, I do know, had a bunch of children, and many of them died. And you know that because they're all buried in a row over there at All Hallows Cemetery, you know, all the little headstones of his children. Now, his one daughter lived here till she died, and she died very, very old. But the people that bought it and operated it as a B&B, you know, years ago, I got this information from them. That was Larry and Suzanne Knudsen. And Suzanne said, she said, sometimes I'd wake up and I could smell something like bacon or ham cooking, and I'd come downstairs and there's nothing. She said, so there were a few instances. I always felt like it was that daughter of George Washington Purnell that was still here. I never felt like it was children. I always felt like it was her. And there were times over the years that I would sense her presence. You just knew she was there. It didn't bother me. But yeah, I mean, so that story of hers has been featured in several books. The last thing that happened here that really freaked me out was I was doing this ghost tour one night, because I have guides to do them, but I had to do the Snow Hill tour. And I had the group right here, and there was a couple that had a little 4-year-old girl. And while I was standing telling the story, the 4-year-old girl was here at the fence, and she was talking to someone. And I noticed it, but her mother didn't. And so when I said, let's go down to the river because that's where we end the tour, this little girl's holding on to the fence and she will not. No, I don't want to go. I'm talking to someone. So the mother, and she was like 4 or 5. She was too young, I thought, to make it up. So the mother said, no, you're not, and we have to go. And she picks her up, and the girl starts crying and doing this. And then, clear as day, the girl looks at her mother and says, look, she's dead. So okay. I just wanted to get a 20 out of my wallet and say, thank you, you made the tour to this child, but I know she didn't intend it. So you see, that's the exciting thing about ghost stories, is when you can link together unrelated sources to the same story and draw it all together. Even something that a child can't, they can't put on like that. It's just thrilling to me. I love it.
And we love your passion for those on the other side, Mindy. Coming up after the break, we'll head back to Scorchy's Corner, where he'll introduce us to a canning champion. Outdoors Delmarva will be right back.
You're watching Outdoors Delmarva, presented by Gateway Subaru. Higher standards.
Welcome back to Outdoors Delmarva. Now, this time of year, you may be wondering what to do with all those fruits and vegetables you harvested over the summer. Scorchy Taws introduces us to a Selbyville woman who might be able to give you some tasty inspiration.
Delmarva Sports Network, remembering Scorchy Taws, presented by Burke Equipment Company.
Visited Terry Swan's Selbyville home recently. She was busy making a batch of spaghetti sauce. Who is Terry Swan? Well, let's put it this way. If there were a Hall of Fame for home food canners, Terry would be in it. For example, this past year, she won 105 ribbons at 3 fairs, 56 of them coming at the Delaware State Fair, including the prestigious Purple Rosette, given for the fair's best canning exhibit.
I won first in jams and jellies, pickles and relishes, fruits and vegetables, all 4 categories to win the Purple Rosette. And I've held it for the last 3 years.
After winning, did she thrust her fist in the air and put on a demonstrative show of superiority, so seemingly popular in today's world? Of course Terry didn't.
I cried, right, Todd? When I won the purple ribbon.
Terry Swan admits to being 30-ish, has a husband and 5 children, and is a food canner by choice. She did not follow a family tradition.
Self-taught, never, my mom didn't can. I just was determined. I just was inspired by what I saw at the state fair, and I thought, well, I can do that too.
That was 10 years ago. She never set aside that aspiration and determination, and learned to can she did.
I can just about everything. I started out with jams and jellies, and then I moved into vegetables, and I went to pickles and relishes.
Today, in a time when most women pluck their life-sustaining provisions from the shelves of supermarkets, Terry Swan, Delaware's queen of canners, continues to stock her larder the old-fashioned way.
You could probably buy it cheaper in the store. Some things maybe, but you don't know what you're getting. When you can it yourself, you know what goes in it. I think you can get a better quality produce, and you just have the satisfaction of doing it yourself.
Delicious, Terry. No wonder she's won so many ribbons. Scorchy Taws wandering our Delmarvelous land for WVOC News.
Did you know that then Senator Joe Biden proposed to make Cypress Swamp in Frankfort into a national park to appease environmentalists, but the residents of the area objected to the idea because it would draw an excessive amount of visitors to the area, and the proposal was shot down. Now you do.
Did You Know is sponsored by North Bay Marina.
Coming up after the break, we'll head up to the Marvel Carriage Museum and meet up with a paranormal investigator who tells us who or what might be roaming the grounds in Georgetown. Outdoors Delmarva, we'll be right back.
You're watching Outdoors Delmarva, presented by Gateway Subaru. Higher standards. Sponsored by Shorts Marine.
It's not uncommon during the Halloween season to be on the lookout for spooks and spirits. But if you want to catch a ghost, you're going to need more than just your eyes and luck. And paranormal investigator David Cummings tells us why he got into ghost hunting and some of the tools that he uses to pursue his passion.
I've always been a history fanatic. I've always loved Gettysburg, colonial wars, the Battle of North Point. I grew up in the North Point area. Growing up in the North Point area, in high school, I became known to a teacher who owns, at that time, Todd's Inheritance, which was Mary Todd's family, President Lincoln's wife. They owned that from 1676 until 1989. Now it belongs to Baltimore County Park and Recs. And it would be nothing to see someone walking in that house in colonial uniforms. When I go into some of the places I go in, I get all kinds of feelings. I occasionally see something out of the corner of my eye and stuff, and that started bringing up questions.
And so you, over the years, have gathered up all this equipment to try to bridge the gap, as they're saying.
Yes. So, what I basically try to do is, if they need help, I try to help them pass on. If they don't need help, they just need someone to talk to, I try to talk to them and help them out between the two of us, because I don't talk to them as if they're from 1910 or 18. I talk to them as if we are talking right now, and they relate very well with me. And I also have people, I have this historical society and others that I get phone calls saying they're having problems with their homes, and they want to know what's going on, and I'll go to those homes and try to find out what's going on, and if need be, contact another group that cleanses homes.
In this particular room that we're in now, you actually have a lot of activity that you've told us about.
Yes, sir. I've had one run through me in this room. I've had them act up a million different ways on a thermal camera, on the SLS camera, with the equipment that you see behind you. In fact, while we were setting up, you saw one of the pieces going off. This building is, I call, the most active. There are approximately 12 buildings on this property, and I've had activity in every one of them. Some are here, like I fully believe, and others fully believe that Mr. Marble himself is still here. Some are here because they want to be here. This was Mr. Marble's life. He put a lot of energy and a lot of interest and everything into this museum. There are others here that, because of the artifacts. I call this my playground. I literally do. There's quite a few buildings, and every building has some form of activity.
All right, well, there you go. Spooky season is upon us, and if you're so inclined to get out there and test your luck to try to find the spirits that have gone on before us, well, you might want to check with this guy first, because he seems to know what he's talking about. David, thank you very much for taking the time, and we wish you well in all your ventures.
Thank you.
And we wish you happy hunting out there. The gear that David uses can be a bit pricey, so if you want to get into ghost hunting, you may want to save your pennies. Coming up after the break, we'll take a look at your latest viewer photos and videos, thanks to our friends at North Bay Marina. Outdoors Delmarva, we'll be right back.
You're watching Outdoors Delmarva, presented by Gateway Subaru. Higher standards.
Welcome back to Outdoors Delmarva. It's time to flip through the photo album and take a look at your latest viewer photos and videos, thanks to our friends at North Bay Marina.
15-year-old Austin Dostal of Harbison harvested this 9-pointer in Milton with his crossbow at 35 yards. That's a great-looking buck, Austin. 8-year-old Callum Hales of Berlin passed his hunter safety course the morning of October 22nd and harvested this 8-pointer the very same day with a muzzleloader. Hats off to you, Callum. Megan Watts, known as Waterfowl Queen on Instagram, harvested these doves in Preston. Be sure to follow her to keep up with all of her hunting adventures alongside her best friend, Wren. And Gary Peak Jr. of Pittsville seems to subscribe to the old adage, work smarter, not harder, by having the deer come right up to his tree stand. And for me, it's not the autumn season until I go to Mr. Pepper's Pumpkin Patch in Laurel. When the weather is just right, there's no other place I like to go to get my pumpkin on. Mr. Pepper's is a staple of Halloween traditions here on Delmarva. From the hay rides, to the jungle maze, to even a small beehive, Mr. Pepper's Pumpkin Patch is a fall-time outdoor activity that is sure to please the entire family. But obviously, the main stars of the show are the pumpkins. If you're wondering if Mr. Pepper paid me to come out and speak so highly of the place, the answer is no. I really just love the simplicity of this outdoor treasure, and I look forward to stopping in each and every year. Now, Mr. Pepper isn't a man of many words, but he did have a few words of wisdom he wanted to pass on.
Get outdoors, Delmarva.
That's our show for this week. My thanks to Mindy Burgoyne of Chesapeake Ghost Tours and paranormal investigator David Cummings for helping us get into the spirit of the season. If you'd like to book your ghost tour, make sure you stop by ChesapeakeGhosts.com. Keep sending in your viewer photos and videos to outdoors@wboc.com. Remember to like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. We'll see you next week as we do a bit of bird watching and stroll through a fall tradition in Bridgeville. So until then, my name is Jason Lee, and I hope to see you outdoors, Delmarva.